she is. But we all hopefully know that she is a Dame of the British Empire, and she's also a UN Messenger of Peace. Beyond that, I think the movie said it all. So I'm just going to ask Jane Goodall to come to the stage with me.
I want to say thank you for that wonderful welcome, and I want to give you my version. That's especially for you guys up there.
So Jane's a bit of a kidder, so when we were describing the stage and we were going to have to walk out here in single file, she said, I think I'm going to pretend I'm falling, and she didn't go through with it, but here she is. So get used to it. That's what you're in for tonight. So if she looks like she's falling. See, the problem is now it'll be like Wolf. If you start to fall, we'll all just laugh, and you'll end up down.
No, there's some of you guys in the front row run to catch me, right? Yes, you see, hey.
So we thought we'd have a bit of a conversation, and normally when I'm with Jane, we're talking about the work, we're talking about her life, but this is obviously about the film. So we've come up with some questions that quite often Jane gets asked about the film, and after seeing it, I think you'll probably want to know some of these, hear some of the answers to this. So the film is really incredible. So it's always interesting to hear from Jane how she felt when she first saw it.
Well, it was very interesting because the way that this whole film came about, I was approached by somebody from the Geographic, and they said, we have kind of rediscovered in an archive this footage that was all the remnants from the early Geographic films that had never been seen. And would I be interested in a retrospective of my time at Gombe? And I said, well, there's been so many films made about me and the chimps. Come on, not another one. And the Jane Goodall Institute in US, they were very keen for this to be done, so they had their own conversations with the Geographic. And in the end, they said to me, all it will require from you is 1 3-hour interview. That's what they said. And the director, Brett Morgan, who has done an amazing job, he and I never met. And for some odd reason, he never contacted me about the tremendous, I mean, he was confronted with boxes in all higgledy-piggledy order, without any labels, not in consecutive order, no sound attached to the film reels. And this wasn't digital. This was the old, for some of you who remember the old celluloid film, you know, in these rolls and spools. And it took over 4 years to work out which chimps were which, and the order of things, and involved reading all the books. And the first time I saw it, it was basically completely finished. And he sent the producer over to England to show me the film. And right from that moment, but especially seen on a big screen like this, it is the only documentary out of all those that have been made that takes me right back into my 26-year-old skin. And I think it's because, you know, it was that original footage, and he had the idea of using my voice, which he got from I did an audio recording of one of my books, so he took my voice from that. So it was my voice giving you know, life to what I felt at the time. So it wasn't some commentator who knew nothing about me or the chimps, you know, kind of talking away about what was going on. It was me. And I think that was one of the things that made it just seem so real. And so I just think Brett did an incredible job.
And when you were at TIFF and Brett Morgan was on the stage with Jane talking about making the film, and if any of you have seen Brett Morgan's film on Kurt Cobain, it was a really amazing documentary, but he said in a question about going from Kurt Cobain to Jane Goodall that she was the actual rock star that he really adored. So yeah, there was quite a crush going on, I think. Actually, maybe, Jane, you could just talk about the soundtrack, too. I've been lucky to be at Gombe, and the sound on there really does take you back. And talk about the film sound, the sound behind.
Yeah, well, I just think that the authentic sounds of Gombe make the film really special. So the insects and the birds. And what's the man's name who he went out to Gombe for nearly a month. And I'm forgetting his name now, but he is the absolute #1. He calls himself a soundscape artist. And in the terrible fires in California, he lost his house, he lost everything. Fortunately, he had backup of the sounds. Yeah. But I'll think of his name in a minute and I'll tell you when I do. But I think having him there for so long and having his sounds were very, very special. Mm.
The movie's been called a love story, and on so many fronts it is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's a love story in several different aspects. It's a love story definitely between me and the chimps. There's no question about that. And it didn't happen straight away. You know, people so often think that I went to Africa with the resolve to study chimpanzees, but that wasn't so. I would have studied any animal. It was Louis Leakey who suggested the chimpanzees. Mm. You know, how amazing is that? The animal most like us, Jane with no degree, and I get offered this incredible opportunity. So I didn't know anything really about chimpanzees when I began, certainly not in the wild, but neither did anybody else. Nobody had done it before. That was lucky too. So it was a gradual love story with David Greybeard and Flo and Flint and Fifi and all those chimpanzees that were almost like part of my family. And then, of course, there was the love story with me and Hugo. And then there's the love of a mother with her child. I mean, wasn't Grub a gorgeous baby? Don't you think so? I'd completely forgotten how enchanting he was. And I love that scene when he's 3 years old and that interviewer flies out and asks him to make animal sounds. It was just so perfect. Somebody said to me the other day, people are strange. They said to me, they said to me, don't you think you are exploiting your child? And I said, what, exploiting him? Asking him to show off the way he can make animal sounds. Anyway, so it was that was a love story. And it was also, the love of my mother and me. So I think it was a love story in many ways. And added to that, there was my growing love of and understanding of the forest. Mm-hmm.
So the film recently won 2 Emmys, one for director Brett Morgan and for Hugo and his cinematography. How did you feel about those wins?
Well, I was really, really happy for Brett because although he's had many accolades, he never got an Emmy for directing a film. Mm. So this was absolutely super. And he was, over the moon about it, really excited. And then for Hugo, you have to realize that when people go out to make a wildlife film today, they have digital They have fairly light equipment. There's usually a little team. Hugo was on his own. He had one of these old-fashioned, I mean, most people don't remember these cameras. It was an old Bolex. They were about this big, and they had to be mounted on a wooden tripod because they were so heavy. And they had this celluloid film. You had to thread it through all these sprockets and round these sprockets and through the gate and round some more sprockets. And so he had to put a black bag over his head because you hadn't to let the light in. And if you got one little hair in the gate, the entire film would be ruined. So you had to make sure that you brushed the gate clean. And it's just so different from the digital technology of today. So the fact that he managed, with his patience and his understanding of animals, which was the love affair between us, to get this footage, which still today, with a little bit of, they have very clever ways of restoring some of the color, which obviously fades over the many, many years since it was made, and that it can be so vivid and so compelling, and so showing his breadth of love and understanding of animals. So it's not just the chimpanzees, but all that amazing footage of the insects and the birds, and then on the Serengeti, which was his real love. So I'm thrilled. It was the very first posthumous award that the Emmys have given.
Oh,
so,
that's nice.
Yeah. And especially exciting for his son and his grandchildren. They are so proud.
That's lovely. So there were a lot of challenges that you faced during your time at Gombe, living with wild chimpanzees, limited finances, Hugo arriving into your space, raising grub. It's hard to believe you were able to keep going and deal with it all. What was the secret to doing that?
Well, I think the secret, Andrea, was, it was something I was passionate about. I was chosen by Louis Leakey. And so it was very important to me that I live up to him because so many people criticized everything. And so what kept me going, I've always been very obstinate. You know that.
Not saying a word.
And so
it's payday on Friday.
I don't give up easily. I wasn't brought up to give up easily. And I was determined to make it work. And somehow, the more challenging the situation is, the more determined I became. And if people were critical, well, I'm going to carry on anyway, because it was something I had to do. And honestly, looking back over my life, it's almost as though I was put here for a purpose and that there was a mission. And going through my life, and I've often done this, there were points along the journey where all I had to do was to make the right decision. And I think looking back that at each of these points I did make the right decision, and that's brought me to this bizarre life I have today. But what kept me going was determination and obstinacy.
So what's happened to the chimps at Gombe? Do the relatives of the chimps in the film still live there?
Well, obviously all the chimpanzees who are like part of my family, they're no longer there. Chimps can live 60 years, but we began nearly 60 years ago. So obviously many of them who were already grown up when I began, they've gone. Yes, so Fifi, who's the main character of the female
84, and you were gone for a long time on your own. And so is that part of your routine when you're at Gombe, even now?
Well, at Gombe, I have many obligations to fulfill. There's usually groups of people like yours who expect to have dinner with Jane, right? I mean, that's how
you offered. Oh, how the story changes when they're
bit of arm twisting there. Anyway, you're not the only one. But I mean, there are 34 Jane Goodall Institutes, and they all want to send little groups, and they all want to tell their groups, well, if you're lucky, you might get a glimpse of Jane. So anyway, so you hope to get a glimpse of me. You just
and then you
it.
said, how about dinner?
Yeah, but anyway, every time, because I don't want to see you in the forest.
Goes on. These people are waiting for an answer.
So anyway, so when I go to Gombe, it's usually for not more than 3 or 4 days. There are groups of people, donors, potential donors, people I feel grateful to, and I want to spend a bit of time with them. There are the field staff who work away every day, and some of them have been with us for years and years and years, and it's really important for me to go and speak with them and the national park staff and sort of keep up this, to let them know how much their work is appreciated by people like you around the world. So that's an important thing to do. And then there are all kinds of always problems. The students, I need to spend time with them, but every single time, even if I'm only there for 3 days, I insist 1 day is mine, 1 day I will go out into the forest. And the sad thing is today, I usually sort of avoid the chimps because almost always there are tourists around the chimpanzees, and the tourists seem just as interested in photographing me as the chimp.
Grub, and he goes off to school. And did he continue to live with you at Gombe for any great amount of time?
Well, when Grub went off to school, up until he was 3 years old, I didn't spend one single night away from him, not one. And most of each day was his, and I said that in the film. And then when he got to, the film says 6.5, I thought it was 8, but anyway, because, there was trying to homeschool him. And then I had students come out specially to try and homeschool him, and it simply didn't work. So clearly he had to go off and go to school. And when people say, how could you let him go off to England school? But it was, we've always been an extended family, so he went to Mum. And Mum had been there, she came out to Gombe when he was very small. And so he wasn't going away, he was part of an extended family. To invest in this way. So he went out to Gombe to talk about the housing that we need to build at Gombe. And
Great.
so he's hoping to go back and do that in Tanzania. But housing is needed all over the world, and maybe he'll work in other places as well.
Right. So is there a fictionalized version of your life on the horizon? And if so, who do you think should play you? Because I know people have asked you.
Well, honestly, I don't have time to watch movies. You know, in the old days I used to, and some of you will remember going back, way back to The King and I and Brief Encounter and those movies, which are the ones I used to watch, and going back to the days of Frank Sinatra, and, you know, that's my era. And after that, I was out in Gombe. And I wasn't watching movies anymore. We didn't have little gadgets. Yes. So anyway, so Mum, knowing how much I loved Tarzan, she saved up money so that when the first Tarzan movie came over, 9 times, who did you find to play Jane? I actually heard a sound guy in the backstage, and he said to me, he said, who did they get to play you? But anyway, the question you asked was, yes, there is Leonardo DiCaprio's film, whatever you call it, I don't know what you call these things, Appian Way, to his film studio. They do want to make a first about gorillas in the mist. They think I'm Diane Fossey because gorillas in the mist. I remember a flight attendant, and she came up to me, she was very polite, at the end of a flight she said, "Oh, Miss Fossey, I'm so proud to have had you on my flight." And I smiled at her, and I thought, you know, she's going to say to somebody, "Guess who I had on my flight today?" And they're going to say, "Don't you know she's dead?" And she goes, "Oh my God." So, you know, so anyway, kind of getting towards, but you know, the last time I was talking to Leonardo, I said, you know, wouldn't it be great if at some point, before the film or after the film, I could say to you, you know, my job now is to take a message around the world that we need to protect these chimpanzees and the forests they live in, and therefore all the other amazing biodiversity. And I go around the world and there's all kinds of people, yes, who do know about Jane. But I said, Leo, far more people, you have a huge audience of different kinds of people that I can't reach. So we have a little scene maybe around a campfire, and I can say to him, you know, can you help me spread my message around the world in your circles? And we thought that would be a really nice little thing to add to the film and make it genuine, show people, you know, that it isn't Jane, but Jane wants this, because Jane wants this to go out further and further, so we can see
cover girl for National Geographic, and I'm telling you...
because of my legs.
Well, from here up, you're still on the covers of a lot of magazines, and all I'm saying is there is something about someone like Jane that still astounds me at your age about the men in your circle. I mean, it's a really lovely thing, and it's just, I don't know why I had to say that there, but it's the name talk. Well, it's just you're dropping Leo's name and things like that.
Know what it is. I often wonder what it is about me. I don't know why. What's happened to me has happened to me. And that's why I said earlier, I think I was put here for a reason. And quite honestly, if we think about the mess in the world today, if we think about the fighting, if we think about the political infighting and divides, isn't love something really, really important?
So there are a few years between Jane in the film and the Jane sitting here, but you still seem to be as active and young at heart. What keeps you ticking?
Probably all these men loving me. By the way, a lot of people like on Late Night Show, they always say, Jane, you should come on the road with us. And when I meet people, they say, well, we've read everything you ever wrote, and we've been to some of your lectures, but we never realized that you were so funny.
I think it's partly, because I'm feeding you the lines about the lines. So it's a combo here.
Well, watch me on some of the late night shows.
Oh. I
have fun. And by the way, this is something we don't appreciate enough. And it's what I tell, you know about our youth program, Roots and Shoots, which is now in 80 countries. And we've got about 150,000 active groups of all ages of young people working to make the world a better place for people, animals, and the environment. And I always say to them, one thing when you think about what you're going to do and you work out how you're going to do it and you roll up your sleeves and you go out and you take action, whether it's clearing up litter, planting trees, volunteering in shelters, growing organic food, whatever it is, if you don't have fun doing it, fun with your friends, then the whole project will fade away and fizzle. We need laughter in our lives. It's really important, and I mean this. And there's a group of Buddhist monks, and once a week, I think it's on a Friday, they are made to climb up quite a steep mountain, and they have to spend 1 hour up there belly laughing. And this is, it's good for us to laugh. That's why I like making people laugh. So thank you for feeding me lines to make everybody laugh.
Well, I'll just end by saying, Jane, as I always do when we're together, I tell the crowd of people that you don't take any fees from these events. And again, I will say that's a testament to her commitment to improving this world for people, animals, and the environment. And I know as an organization, we really, really appreciate it.